Still, the investigation expanded. Bank accounts froze, court hearings were announced, and the HOA's once pristine office was sealed off with evidence tape. But late one evening, Adam received an envelope slipped under his door. No address, no postage, just his name across the front. Inside were photos, grainy, taken from a distance. Him walking his dog, shopping, sitting on his porch. Someone was following him. The last photo made his breath catch. It wasn't recent. It was from inside his garage, a low-angle shot pointed at his security camera console. Whoever took it had been inside. That night, sleep wouldn't come. Every sound felt louder, every shadow closer. His cameras, his tools of exposure, now felt like traps, eyes pointing both ways. He'd built them to catch the truth, but now they showed him how far that truth had reached back. Outside, the neighborhood was unraveling faster each day. What once was manicured and artificial now looked battered, raw. Signs calling for new leadership clashed with vandalized lawns reading, "Leave our community alone." Police cars became a common sight, flashing blue against the same curbs that once prided themselves on peace. Adam began to understand what he had really done. He hadn't just unmasked corruption. He'd torn away an illusion the community needed to feel safe. And without that illusion, chaos replaced comfort. Yet through the tension, through the rising anger, there was no regret. Truth, he thought, had a cost, and he'd already paid it. The question now was whether he could survive it. By the end of the week, a new headline emerged, one that froze him where he stood. It read, "HOA whistleblower under investigation for cyber trespass." Someone had filed a report claiming his evidence was illegally obtained, that he'd hacked private systems. They had turned the system on him, the same way they'd turned it on residents for years. Adam stared at the news release, the weight of it pressing down like a physical hand. His victory had become their weapon. His attempt to expose them had given them new ground to strike back. Still, beneath that fear, a small spark refused to die. He knew what he had uncovered wasn't done yet. Those invoices hinted at more, at connections far beyond Willow Bend. If they wanted to silence him, it meant one thing. There was something worse beneath it all. The next morning, he packed a small bag, copied every remaining file to multiple encrypted drives, and left a single message online. It read simply, "They think this ends here. It doesn't." As his car rolled out of Willow Bend, the manicured perfection faded behind him, replaced by silence and suspicion. The HOA might have fallen, but something bigger was still standing in its shadow. And Adam was about to follow that shadow to its source. Days turned into weeks, and the storm rolling over Willow Bend refused to fade. Every news outlet that had once praised Adam's courage now chased him for a different story. The man accused of crossing lines in his pursuit of justice. The same flood of attention that had once vindicated him now framed him as an outlaw in his own narrative. But while the headlines twisted the truth, Adam's mind remained fixed on one goal, finishing what he started. The files he had taken, the invoices, the connections, the hidden transactions, pointed somewhere beyond the tidy borders of his community. All trails led to a single unnamed account registered through a real estate management shell company. It wasn't about one HOA anymore. It was a network, a chain of associations siphoning millions nationwide. They operated quietly, using neighborhood budgets as feeding grounds. The theft of packages, the false fines, the inflated charges, all were small parts of something larger. Patricia and Trevor had been pawns, local enforcers in a much wider game. Now both were gone. Patricia hiding in silence, Trevor facing federal investigations, but the system that empowered them still breathed elsewhere. Adam spent each night piecing together the final puzzle. He worked out of motels now, far from Willow Bend's wrought iron gates. His name was whispered, his reputation fractured. Yet to those who mattered, he was the threat that wouldn't vanish. The man who exposed one lie and refused to stop digging. The files spread across his desk told a simple story of greed disguised as governance. HOA management companies collected dues from hundreds of communities, shifting portions through fake maintenance contracts and storage rentals. The numbers were neat, professional, and meticulously forged. Hidden beneath them was proof too strong to ignore. One evening, As storm clouds moved across the horizon, Adam took his final step. He recorded everything, his story, the evidence, the connections, the threats. The video began not with rage, but with calm clarity. He narrated every discovery from start to finish, the theft, the cover-ups, the intimidation. There were no dramatics, no ridicule, just quiet truth spoken with the exhaustion of someone who had carried too much for too long. When the video went live, it spread even faster than the first. Only this time, it wasn't entertainment. It was evidence, official evidence. Journalists, lawyers, and investigators began sifting through every word, every document. Governments responded, hearings were announced, and lawsuits flooded the courts. The scandal grew into something national, a conversation bigger than Adam himself. Back in Willow Bend, the neighborhood he once called home stood in eerie silence. The HOA office stood empty now, its sign removed, its reputation erased. People no longer spoke about fines or codes, they spoke about rebuilding. Small acts of kindness replaced years of tension. The walls that had divided them under Patricia's rule had come down. But Adam never returned. He watched from a distance, anonymous again by necessity. The FBI acknowledged his role, quietly protecting his identity while labeling him a federal informant. Power, as it turned out, had roots in every city. What he uncovered in one community had triggered investigations across the state. Patricia was eventually found, living in another county under a different name. She faced charges but remained bitter to the end, claiming she had only followed orders. Trevor's arrest followed soon after. His confession tied multiple HOA networks together. The nation's perception of homeowner associations changed overnight. They were no longer symbols of security, but warning beacons of what unchecked authority could become. In the shadows of that revelation, Adam finally felt something close to peace. He hadn't won fame, or comfort, or even safety, but he'd won truth. Months later, he drove past Willow Bend one last time. The streets were still lined with the same manicured trees, but something had changed. Homes now bore their own colors, shades of blue, yellow, and green replacing the sterile grays that once dominated the community. Freedom had returned in small, beautiful ways. He parked for a moment at the end of the street, watching as children played by mailboxes that no longer bore HOA stamps. The laughter filled the air like a sound he hadn't heard in years. When he finally drove away, he left behind not a war, but a warning carved into the fabric of suburbia. The story of one man who refused to stay silent, and how that defiance burned through the illusion of perfection to expose what lay beneath. Some said he destroyed the place. Others said he saved it. But for Adam, neither mattered. The packages were gone, the HOA was gone, and the nightmare was finally over. In the rearview mirror, Willow Bend disappeared in the distance, smaller and quieter than it had ever seemed before. The streets would heal, the people would move on. And somewhere, in the endless sprawl of other neighborhoods ruled by unseen hands, another whisper began. Another resident starting to ask who really controlled their peace. The cycle would continue, but now it had a name, and a story that could never again be buried. Started small, quiet enough to ignore. The kind of problem most people brushed off with a shrug. A package here, a small box there. Delayed, lost, or marked as delivered but never found. For months, Adam Lewis put up with it, his patience holding steady in that same dull rhythm that comes with suburban life. Willow Bend was supposed to be a safe community, built on comfort, predictability, and clean sidewalks. Nothing bad ever really happened there, until it did. At first, he trusted the excuses. Maybe the delivery driver dropped them at the wrong address. Maybe porch thieves were scoping the area. But soon, it wasn't just random boxes. It was specific. Items Adam had been waiting for, tools, electronics, small gadgets for his home workshop, kept vanishing. They were always marked as delivered, yet never appeared. He walked the street one afternoon, scanning neighboring porches, checking the cluster of mailboxes by the HOA sign that read Willow Bend, a community of harmony and pride. Every word on that sign felt heavier now, a reminder of how closely the HOA monitored everything from lawn height to paint shades. But packages? That they didn't seem to care about. By the fourth missing delivery, frustration replaced confusion. He filed a report with the delivery company, then with local authorities. Nothing changed. The answers blended into one another. Delays, supply errors, lost shipments. He began to lose faith in systems that once made him feel secure. And still, the boxes disappeared. Then, one morning, a neighbor mentioned something unsettling. They'd seen movement near Adam's porch late at night, silhouettes under the security lights, someone bending near the packages. Maybe porch pirates, they said. Adam's uneasiness deepened. Porch pirates didn't usually walk through gated communities under cameras. This felt different. That night, he set up his own system. A small, motion-activated camera tucked behind a potted plant, aimed at the front door. He didn't expect much, just proof that someone was there. But when he reviewed the footage 3 nights later, what he found made his heart drop. The quality wasn't perfect, but it was clear enough. A woman approached the porch, her movements careful, methodical. Hair tied back, clipboard in hand. She didn't look like a thief. She looked official. The camera caught the moment she lifted the package, glanced around casually, then walked away, straight toward the HOA office across the street. He rewound the clip again and again, shocked yet certain. He recognized her instantly. It was Patricia Langford, the HOA president. The face from every newsletter, the voice from every community announcement about upholding neighborhood standards. The woman who insisted on fines for trash cans left out overnight. No one would believe it at first, he thought. The HOA ran everything, the rules, the meetings, the social events. Patricia had power. A quiet kind of power, the kind people trusted without questioning. Adam knew if he confronted her or reported it, the problem wouldn't vanish. It would multiply. So, standing there in the dim glow of his computer screen, he made a different decision. He didn't call the police. He didn't email the HOA. He created a new folder on his computer and titled it Project Honor. For the first time in weeks, he wasn't angry. He was calm, deliberate. He wanted justice, yes, but more than that, he wanted truth. If the woman who fined residents for lawn weeds was stealing from their porches, the world deserved to see it. Over the next week, Adam added more cameras around his home, one near the garage, another aimed across the street. He waited, patient and silent, pretending everything was normal. Meanwhile, his missing packages continued to multiply. Each one vanished into Patricia's hands, disappearing beneath her polished HOA smile. By the 7th theft, he had everything. Angles, timestamps, even her car parked in the frame, license plate fully visible. He compiled it all carefully, cutting the clips in sequence, adding short captions for context. It wasn't revenge. It was storytelling as clear and precise as truth could be. The final footage was undeniable. Proof beyond question. When Adam posted the video online under an anonymous account, he didn't expect much. Maybe a few hundred views, maybe a comment or two from frustrated homeowners. But by sunrise, the video had thousands of clicks, hundreds of shares, and a comment section filling with outrage. In less than a day, the headline spread across every homeowner's forum and social platform. HOA president caught stealing packages from residents. The storm had begun. And for Patricia Langford, the woman who once ruled the neighborhood, her empire of order was about to collapse under the weight of her own greed. The video wasn't just evidence, it was exposure. And everyone was watching. By sunrise, the neighborhood was unrecognizable. The manicured calm that once defined Willow Bend had been replaced by whispers, curious stares, and the faint hum of phone notifications. Every resident had seen the footage by now. The woman who ruled their cul-de-sacs and gardens caught red-handed under the glow of a porch light. Patricia Langford's reputation didn't crumble quietly. It shattered in waves. By mid-morning, someone had shared the video on neighborhood watch groups, then on a citywide page dedicated to HOA horror stories. From there, it spread uncontrollably, picked up by news outlets and homeowner forums across the country. Every headline said the same thing: HOA president steals from residents. Patricia's inbox flooded with messages, some demanding explanations, others hurling insults, and a few from former allies who no longer wanted to be associated with her. Her phone rang nonstop, but she couldn't bear to answer. She sat in her kitchen, still in her robe, staring at her reflection in the black screen of her tablet, the silence pressing in like judgment. The footage had stripped away her control, the same control she had spent years building. No carefully crafted statements, no polished HOA announcements could repair this. It was permanent, frozen in pixels and shared endlessly by people who didn't even know her name a week ago. Across the street, Adam watched the neighborhood change from his front porch. Cars slowed as they passed Patricia's house. Neighbors who once greeted her politely now avoided her completely. For the first time in years, Willow Bend felt unscripted. It wasn't orderly or polite. It was raw, alive, unpredictable. But Adam hadn't expected it to explode quite like this. Thousands of comments poured in from strangers thanking him for exposing another HOA tyrant. People began sending stories of their own experiences. Lies, fines, and intimidation hidden behind the guise of suburban harmony. The internet had decided Patricia represented them all. He wasn't sure how to feel about that. A quiet satisfaction pulsed in his chest, but there was unease too. It wasn't just about his missing packages anymore. It had become a movement, a digital revolt against people like her. Meanwhile, the HOA board scrambled to contain the damage. An emergency meeting was called, closed to the public but impossible to hide. Residents gathered outside the clubhouse as if waiting for a verdict. Rumors tore through the crowd like wind. Patricia was suspended, she'd resigned, or she was being investigated by police. No one knew for sure. Inside, the board's composure fractured. They condemned Patricia's behavior publicly but privately tried to distance the association from her entirely. The video was undeniable. Yet for years, many of them had ignored complaints, covered late reports, and helped maintain her spotless image. Now, that spotless image was the stain burning through their foundation. That afternoon, reporters appeared at the gated entrance, trying to film interviews with residents. A few spoke willingly, telling stories about HOA harassment, late-night citations, and absurd fines. Each account added fuel to the growing fire. Willow Bend had gone from a symbol of structured peace to a public spectacle. Patricia shut herself inside, closing blinds and locking doors. Her car, once a gleaming silver SUV that she drove proudly through the neighborhood, sat untouched in the driveway, an object of ridicule now. She tried to draft a statement, something formal and apologetic, but her words faltered. How do you defend stealing the trust of a whole community? By midnight, bright lights flickered outside her home. News crews had stationed themselves near the fence, narrating live as the scandal unfolded. Each word spoken about her was another nail in a coffin she'd built herself. Adam watched from his upstairs window, the glow of the TV cameras bouncing off his lawn. He felt a strange mix of victory and guilt. The justice he sought had arrived, but it carried a weight he hadn't expected. Patricia's expression, caught on one lingering shot when she peeked through her curtains, didn't show defiance. It showed fear. And then came the message, an email from an address he didn't recognize. No subject line, no greeting, just a single sentence. You don't know who you've really embarrassed. He read it twice, uneasy. It wasn't from Patricia. The tone was colder, calculated. Someone else was angry now. Someone who saw his video as more than revenge. Someone who wanted this quiet rebellion silenced. The neighborhood, still buzzing with gossip and flashing headlines, didn't notice the shift. But Adam did. He backed up his footage again, locking every file behind encrypted passwords. He had exposed the truth. But what if the truth had just begun to uncover something far darker? The fame was spreading faster than even he could contain. And with it, something else. Threats, power plays, and secrets that reached deeper than one package thief ever could. The downfall of Patricia Langford wasn't the end. It was the signal flare that would unravel everything Willow Bend tried to hide. And Adam had just lit the fuse. The chaos of Patricia's downfall sent ripples through Willow Bend's polished exterior. The HOA board, once a fortress of order and control, now teetered under scrutiny. What had begun as one woman's disgrace quickly evolved into a full-blown reckoning. There were whispers of missing funds, uneven enforcement of fines, and falsified approvals. The neighborhood's perfect image was collapsing under the weight of the truth. For the first few days after the viral video, everyone assumed Patricia's resignation would fix things. The community would elect a new president, issue apologies, and move on. But the damage ran deeper. Her personal theft had only lit the match. The real fire was in what it revealed. Power abused quietly for years under the guise of order. Adam had tried to step back, to let the chaos unfold without his name attached. But even under anonymity, people began to speculate. Conversations in the HOA Facebook group grew vicious. Residents demanded accountability, quoting old rules and fees that now seemed ridiculous in light of everything that had come to light. Hidden stories surfaced. Someone charged $1,000 for a mailbox that didn't match regulation color. Another forced to repaint an entire house because of a two-shade difference in tone. The HOA's foundation, its authority, was cracking. Then one evening, Adam received another anonymous message. It contained a series of scanned documents, labeled simply proof. They were financial records showing HOA payments to a private storage company, invoices signed by Patricia and another name, Trevor Shaw, vice president of the board. The numbers didn't add up, and neither did the explanations. The payments were large, recurring, and hidden under vague descriptions like community improvements. It was money laundering hidden behind bureaucracy. Adam's first instinct was disbelief, but the more he checked, the more sense it made. The fines, the constant rule enforcement, it all fueled funding the HOA could redirect quietly. Patricia might have been the face of the greed, but she wasn't alone. He spent hours poring through the records, connecting dots. Each new line item revealed more depth to the scheme. The theft of packages wasn't random, it was symbolic. Patricia had taken tangible things for herself while her board siphoned invisible wealth under everyone's noses. Adam realized that if he posted this new evidence, it wouldn't just humiliate one person. It would collapse the entire structure of Willow Bend's leadership. But there were risks. The HOA had powerful connections, from lawyers to city officials. His video had made waves, yes, but power always struck back hard. The previous ominous email came to mind, and this time its warning felt clearer. Someone inside the board knew he had more, and they were waiting for his next move. Around the neighborhood, distrust grew like wildfire. Residents gathered in small groups, forming informal alliances. Some wanted reform, others revenge. Lawns once kept pristine now lay cluttered with protest signs demanding financial transparency. The HOA office, always spotless, was vandalized one evening with red spray paint across its walls. Just one word: thieves. Trevor Shaw called an emergency meeting that week. His tone broadcast through an email that reeked of desperation. He promised transparency, unity, and calm, but his words rang hollow. The residents wanted justice, and nothing less would satisfy them. Meanwhile, Patricia disappeared completely. Her home's windows stayed dark. Mail piled up outside her door. There were rumors she had fled the state to avoid charges. But Adam knew better. She was still close. She was hiding. Someone like her didn't vanish easily. She regrouped. She was as much a victim of the board's secrets as she was their tool. The more Adam thought about it, the clearer his decision became. He had chosen once to expose a thief. Now he'd expose the system that created her. He compiled everything: financial records, scanned documents, bank statements, all layered into a new file titled The HOA's Hidden Hand. This time, he didn't upload anonymously. He put his name front and center. The video narrated the quiet greed of power structures built on fear, every image backed by numbers and signatures. When the video went live, the results were instant. Within hours, real journalists began calling. Lawsuits were mentioned, audits announced. The board scrambled but couldn't contain the storm this time. By nightfall, Willow Bend's HOA had become the subject of regional news broadcasts. Trevor Shaw's image was plastered on screens, his evasive statements only fanning public outrage. Law enforcement opened an inquiry. The HOA's reputation was irreparably broken. Adam felt something he hadn't felt in years, peace. Not triumph, but clarity. The truth finally had sunlight. Yet, even in victory, he knew this wasn't over. Exposing darkness always invited new shadows. He just pulled apart something that had ruled his neighborhood for over a decade. And in the quiet after the storm, a single undeniable question lingered. When power falls, what replaces it? That night, as wind rustled through the cracked perfection of Willow Bend streets, a new kind of silence settled in. A silence not of fear, but anticipation. Because where control once stood, change was creeping in. But in power's absence, chaos always follows. And by dawn, Willow Bend would never be the same again. The morning after Adam's second exposé, Willow Bend looked nothing like the quiet enclave it once pretended to be. News vans idled at the gate, microphones stretched toward anyone willing to speak, and every local outlet wanted interviews with the man who dismantled his HOA from inside the neighborhood. But fame isn't always victory, it's exposure. And exposure attracts enemies. At first, the backlash came quietly. Adam's work email flooded with spam, his social accounts hacked or reported until he had to shut them down. Someone spray-painted the word traitor across his fence in red, and his phone started ringing at odd hours from blocked numbers. There were no words on the other end, just silence, breathing, and the faint sound of a television somewhere distant. Even still, Adam refused to be intimidated. He had uncovered corruption, and now the guilty had nowhere left to hide. The authorities had already begun their investigation. County officials confirmed that Patricia's thefts were only the surface layer of deeper embezzlement. Property funds siphoned for years, contracts awarded to shell companies, HOA dues padding secret accounts. The story spread beyond the neighborhood, beyond the state. But recognition became a double-edged sword. While the public saw him as a hero, some neighbors saw him as the reason their property values were crashing. Open hostility replaced polite greetings. One afternoon, he found his tires slashed. Another morning, the city inspector arrived with a report filed anonymously against his house, claims of unpermitted modifications and code violations. The HOA was collapsing, but a loyal remnant was fighting back in the shadows. At the center of it all was Trevor Shaw, the calm, calculating vice president who had avoided cameras, avoided blame, and now stood alone as the last voice of the old regime. Unlike Patricia, he didn't panic, he planned. The documents Adam exposed had come from somewhere, and Trevor wanted to know where. Word spread that Trevor was making calls to lawyers, even private investigators. Anyone who had ever challenged the HOA suddenly felt a strange paranoia creeping at their doors. It was as though the structure of law and order, once weaponized by the board, had twisted itself into something more personal, less official, more dangerous. Meanwhile, Patricia resurfaced online. An unverified blog post appeared under her name, claiming she had been framed, that the packages she took had been part of an audit project for the HOA's new logistics policy. It was absurd, easily disproven, yet it gained traction among those desperate to believe the scandal wasn't real. Victims of control were now defending their controllers. Fear, it seemed, was a habit that didn't die easily.